These are the jokes, like the things that they are still programming. This guy's more like actually
Bueno, yo voy a dar no como algo que se queda solamente en San Francisco y en Estados Unidos, tema del aborto con mucha fuerza aquí en Estados Unidos, pero se expande a todo el mundo. También estamos hablando pues este crimen no llegue más bien la esperanza se extienda. Entonces quiero reconocer esta lucha que se hace aquí en San Francisco, porque si aquí en San Francisco, que es la falta de violencia, ¿no? Como le dicen, y hasta nos lo hacen saber, la importancia de mantenernos firmes en esta lucha recae no solamente como personas, sino como seres humanos. Entonces, pues nada, nos vemos en la marcha por la vida en California en Sacramento.
I don't think West Virginia's ready for what's about to happen next.
Roe v. Wade is one of those cases that really resonates with people for a long time because it affects the world forever. It is a landmark case that today is the rallying cry for the pro-choice movement, and honestly, a bit of a rallying cry now for the pro-life movement because it's been overturned, meaning it opens up a whole new can of worms. But first, let's talk about Roe v. Wade itself. What was it? What did it actually allow? What happened? Who was Roe? And how was it overturned? So, in 1973, as I already stated, it was found that a Texas abortion law violated the perceived constitutional right to privacy. What's important here is the word perceived. And this is claimed to be found to be implicit in the liberty guarantees of the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of the law. This is going to get real sticky in a minute. In 1970, Norma McCovery, under the alias of Jane Roe, instituted a federal action against Henry Wade, who was the district attorney of Dallas County at the time. And this is in Texas, obviously. Now, what's really interesting is that the court actually changed Norma's name to Roe. Jane Roe. Not Jane Doe, because that would be a little bit too obvious, but Jane Roe. And I mean, obvious is a fake name. You may not know this or not, but for a while, Jane Doe was the name given to any unidentified female corpse or unknown female persons. And so, using it would have been a little bit like... It just would have been a little much, don't you think? So in 1970, she takes this action against Henry Wade. And so Norma asserted that there was an absolute right to terminate pregnancy in any way at any time, which the Supreme Court denied. No. They said no. You don't have the right to terminate a pregnancy in any way at any time. So essentially, with Roe v. Wade, the court formulated a timetable based on the notions of trimester and fetal viability. During the first trimester of pregnancy, the court ruled that the state could not intervene, and I'm reading a citation here, could not intervene in a person's decision to have an abortion under normal circumstances. During the second trimester, state could regulate abortion procedures to protect the health of pregnant persons, but it could not prohibit abortions altogether. From the end of the second trimester, which the court identified as the starting point of viability, the state could regulate or prohibit abortions in order to protect the pregnant person's health or to preserve fetal viability. In no case, however, could the state criminalize abortions that were necessary to protect the life or health of the pregnant person. Which is still a tenet today, I should say, of the pro-life movement that I found, is that they are very, like, if you're going to have a miscarriage or it's a non-viable pregnancy, they have no issue with it being terminated. There was another landmark case briefly after that called Planned Parenthood of Southeastern Pennsylvania v. Casey, and the Supreme Court established that restrictions on abortions are unconstitutional if they place an undue burden on a person seeking an abortion before the fetus is viable. In Gonzalez v. Carhart, 2007, the court upheld the federal Partial Birth Abortion Ban Act of 2003, which prohibited a rarely used abortion procedure known as the intact dilation and evacuation. In Whole Women's Health v. Helderstedt in 2016, the court invoked its decision in Casey to strike down 2 provisions of a Texas law requiring that abortion clinics meet the standards of ambulatory surgical centers and that doctors performing abortions have admitting privileges at a nearby hospital. And then later in Jane Medical Services LLC v. Russo, the court invoked Whole Women's Health to declare unconstitutional a Louisiana statute that was, as the majority noted, nearly identical to the Texas admitting privileges law. What does all that mean? So basically, Roe v. Wade had that timetable that I mentioned that was laid out from the first citation, or the first quotation, whatever you want to call it. And the second quote, it's talking about a bunch of other cases that I'll get into more later. And essentially, they slowly undermine that timetable, and they loosen the restrictions on abortion. I mean, one of those does kind of like, some of them do continue to uphold it, or uphold the previous restrictions, but as time goes on, they simply serve to loosen the restrictions on abortion. In May of 2021, so this is important, the Supreme Court agreed to review its October 2021 term, a lower court's decision to strike down a Mississippi state law adopted in 2018. It banned most abortions after the 15th week of pregnancy, well before the point of fetal viability. There's a lot of discourse. It's actually thought that maybe this was intentional. Maybe the law was designed to get forced into the Supreme Court to overturn all this. That is an actual theory that's out there. I personally don't know the legitimacy of that. It could be true. Could be totally made up. However, this law did exist, and it ends up here. Although the law was plainly unconstitutional under Roe, and as well as Planned Parenthood v. Casey, Mississippi lawmakers passed the measure in the hope. Yeah, so this is what I was talking about. This is part of where I heard that. I heard it a bunch of other places too, but in the inevitable legal challenge would eventually make its way to the Supreme Court, and then it was, in fact, in May of 2022, an apparent draft of a majority opinion in the case, written by Justice Alito, was leaked to the political news publication in an extraordinary breach of the traditional security. Yeah, that's kind of messed up. Whoever breached that should be fired, and I maybe not rights restricted, but you shouldn't be breaching information. I do, yeah. Not cool guy. Anyways, continuing. Deliberations, the opinion dated February 2022 indicated that the court had voted to uphold the Mississippi law and overturn both Roe and Casey. Cool. Now, who is Norma McCovery? I said I was going to cover that. So, she's the real Roe. She was born on September 22nd, 1947 in Semisport, Louisiana, and then she died on February 18th, 2017 in Katy, Texas, which is a little bit ironic. So, in 1970, under the alias of Jane Roe, she petitioned for the action against Wade, and obviously she won that case, thus instating Roe v. Wade legalizing abortions throughout the United States. It's believed that she had a very rough upbringing with an alcoholic father, an alcoholic mother, an absent father, and school troubles, massive school troubles, which is understandable. She was disenfranchised, and she was isolated socially. This is important. There's also something about the concept of her being anonymous for what she wanted to do, which would change constitutional law. That seems kind of untoward. It seems unfair to me, which I also feel is a little bit important to say. This feels very shady that she was, a disenfranchised young woman living in Texas from Louisiana, and they had her change her name and hide. So, in 1995, Norma befriended Philippa Binham, head of an aggressive pro-life organization, Operation Rescue, which surprisingly did not come up in my early research about pro-life groups. And soon, she began campaigning against the right to abortion. In 1998, she converted to Roman Catholicism after coming under the influence of Frank Pavone, who led a pro-life Priests for Life. And in a documentary known as AKA Jane Roe from 2020, as Norma was dying, she actually claimed that she was paid by an anti-abortion group to support their cause and run the case forward. She was abused, obviously, in her childhood, alcoholic mother, absent father, extremely disenfranchised, and then is picked up, covered in anonymity, and then used to set a landmark case that would legalize abortion for the rest of time. Potentially, that is what that stood to do. It potentially stood to legalize abortion for the rest of time. Later, that gets overturned. We're not still at the point where I made up my mind for or against, don't worry. I'm just saying that's shady. You don't get to change constitutional law like that. You don't get to change the way a country operates like that by exploiting a girl who is disenfranchised and then covering her in alias. And later, she goes on to befriend and become a Catholic pro-lifer. Roe died a Catholic pro-lifer. That's odd. So, the Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade. It's the biggest change in abortion rights. President Biden, who was president at the time, strongly disapproved. Nancy Pelosi was quoted to call it a slap in the face to women. Love Nancy Pelosi. Always good for a good laugh. I'm not saying that she's right or wrong here. I'm just saying she's always good for a good laugh. And I listened to the clip where she was giving it, and she is deranged. Chuck Schumer called it one of the darkest days. Some women feel like they lost their liberties. Trigger laws that ban abortion went into effect within hours of this being passed. We hold that the Constitution does not uphold the right to abortion, and then state law is valid and must be upheld. These are two quotes from the decision. The decision was a 5-1-3 decision, meaning 5-4, 1 concurring, 3 dissenting. Which is interesting. That's a pretty solid majority. And concurring just means they agree, but under different grounds, basically. And this allows a state, from the moment of fertilization, to employ a ban. We uphold the Constitution does not confer the right to abortion. That was from Justice Alito. And Thomas wants to revisit other issues, supposedly, such as gay marriage. Not a fan of that idea, but we'll get into that in a second. So, this is a quote. Even as abortions have now become far more restricted overall, the Guttmacher Institute reports that the long-term decline in abortions has reversed. In 2020, there was 930,160 abortions in the U.S., an increase of 8% more abortions than in 2017. The Institute also said that at the same time, fewer people were getting pregnant, and among those who did, a large portion chose to have an abortion. This is from the Guttmacher Institute, and this was released in the aftermath of the overturning of Roe. Now, what decision overturned Roe? Dobbs v. Jackson, Women Health Organization, 2022. And bear with me, I'm covering a lot. I probably won't read all of these to you guys. I will pause and let you read them for yourself. So, Mississippi's Gestational Act provides that, except in a medical emergency or in the case of severe fatal abnormality, a person shall not intentionally or knowingly perform or induce an abortion of an unborn human being if the probable gestational age of the unborn human being has been determined to be greater than 15 weeks. This kicked abortion rights to the states. It did not ban abortion. It did not do anything. It overturned Roe v. Wade, meaning each state is eligible to determine how it wants to treat abortion. And we'll get into how different states have done that in a minute. Here's an excerpt from Justice Alito's opinion. So I'll pause, I'll shut my big mouth, and I'll let you read. Alright, so part of this excerpt, he's talking about how states are allowed to do their own things and states' power. If you're familiar with the sort of setup of the United States, states' power is actually a very big thing. He mentions how Roe v. Wade was not constitutional and was not actually held into Constitution. He mentions a scheme in this quote. I honestly cannot say with 100% certainty he's not referring to the fact that Roe was her name was changed. Further, in his opinion, he talks about, here's the next quote. I'll shut up. Okay, so he's talking about Casey v. Planned Parenthood of Planned Parenthood of Southeastern Pennsylvania v. Casey, and that in his mind, some justices were actually against Roe, and others supported it, obviously, because Casey threw out Roe's trimester scheme, which he's against in this part of his decision, which I kind of agree. Like, at least Roe v. Wade had some protections. Casey just, to a certain degree, don't come for me. Because I know there's going to be one of you scholars up in here. Yeah, to a certain degree, though, it threw that out the window. It did. And later I'm going to look into whether or not late/third trimester abortions are an actual thing that happens. Yeah, I know. Unpopular, but this is going to be unpopular because I'm digging deep. Okay, so this is from Kagan, Justice Kagan. These are his opinions. I'm skating through this. I'm going to let y'all read it. I think this is dissenting, not concurring. So yeah, I'm going to pause, let y'all read, shut my big mouth, and then I'm going to give my opinions on the whole situation. Alright, so this is dissenting. It's the last line that really sends me. Across the vast array of circumstances, a state will be able to impose its moral choice on a woman and coerce her to give birth to a child. How alarmist? Like, okay, some states might be doing this based off religion, which again, I'm not a supporter of, but what if they have, like, actual substantive reason to believe that? And it's not, like, forcing her to give birth. I don't know. I feel like there's a pretty set way on how you get pregnant. I don't know. We're figuring this out together. It feels very alarmist, very like, and I don't know if I necessarily feel like a state will be able to impose its moral choice on a woman and coerce her to give birth to a child. That just seems very, I don't know if that's like actually the verbiage that should be used in this situation, but the majority felt that the 14th Amendment did not protect abortion. Okay, so in this decision, the majority is like, nope, the 14th Amendment does not protect abortion or privacy in that context. And the dissent felt that, this was undermining personal autonomy. I am a huge fan of personal autonomy. We're going to get into whether or not it is. It's one thing we're going to look into. I will say currently I'm a little less neutral because I feel like in this overturning, like not whether or not abortion should be banned or not, but I'm just saying I feel like the Roe v. Wade overturn with the Dobbs decision might have been legitimate after looking into this. However, I don't know if like a nationwide abortion ban's in order yet. I think that there was legitimacy to that. If it genuinely wasn't constitutional law and should be a state's issue, then it should be a state's issue. And if the backing for it wasn't legitimate, which I kind of have to agree, I don't think it was, that's fine. Now, should abortion be morally allowed at the state level? Should, maybe the Supreme Court revisit it with a new level of context? Who knows? That actually might be part of it. We'll talk about that at the end of this, when I've decided if I like it or not. Continuing to roll. So the 14th Amendment, and we're just going to look at a section that's been in reference. So this is the 14th Amendment, Section 1. I'm going to read it to you. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction, therefore, are citizens of the United States and of the states wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction an equal protection of laws. I'm not seeing the privacy thing. Like, life, okay, ba-dum, you thump, go ba-dum. Like, that life, you're alive, drawing air, you can't be denied that without property. Liberty, I sort of read that, I guess, in a more classical definition of being able to wander free, being able to do your own thing, not having the government, like, control your every action. And I guess in that is a little bit of an implicit right to privacy, but I kind of agree with Alito. I don't think that necessarily applies to abortion. Now, do I think that would, should, be the reason to ban abortion? No. But I do think Roe was wrong in that determination, and I think in that then it's justified that it's overturned. Whether or not abortion should be banned or not, we're getting to that. We'll talk about that when I make that decision, like when I make my feeling up on that. We've got a couple more things to talk about, and I haven't decided yet. I think overturning Roe based off this was legitimate because it doesn't address like this idea of right to privacy. You're pregnant. No one's spying on you. I don't know how that applies to privacy. Like, what? And someone in the comments might have a complete but one, I don't see really privacy in this. I can see maybe a little bit of like intellectual property privacy. Like, I think this, I type this, I write this, the government's not going to come read my diary. But you're pregnant. It's medical information. And yeah, we have laws in place to protect that information for other reasons, not because of the 14th Amendment, which those might be able to be part of that argument. But the 14th Amendment, it doesn't address privacy in that manner. And I'm not quite sure how you're linking being pregnant and getting an abortion to your right to privacy, unless we're talking HIPAA. But that would be something completely different. I don't know. Someone who knows more about this when it comes to the intricacies of the connection of these laws might have something else to say on the matter, but from what I'm reading and to my understanding, this makes no sense. And I know a fair bit about the Constitution, about the legal structure of the United States, and I've been looking into this stuff tirelessly. I don't know. I feel like that we're not talking apples to apples here when they say that. That's just what I feel. But like I said, some of y'all might vehemently disagree in that matter, which is fine. You're allowed to be wrong. I'm joking. I do think overturning Roe, though, was very much so justified because I do not think the 14th Amendment protects it the way they thought it did. And I don't know. I know that's not a popular opinion, but I'm also not saying that the overturning of Roe justifies the banning of abortion. I just think that one state probably should. It should probably be a state issue, because it creates a slight diversification of the law, and it's not necessarily it's not a constitutional issue, and so it probably should be a state issue, because constitutional issues are things that obtain to things like life, liberty, and property, not this. Makes sense? So I agree with kicking it to the states. What? I know, I can already feel the keyboard warriors coming. Ah, the activist class. Love you. So next up, we have the abortion regulations by state as trigger laws resultant of the overturning of Roe v. Wade in the Dobbs decision. So here's a map. Pause to look at it a little closer. I don't know. Can you zoom in? Yeah, you can kind of zoom in on YouTube. I don't know if you can swipe over to view it, but you can zoom in. And it's in the show notes, not the ones down here, the ones on Patreon, because these would be a mile long. So this was interesting. 13 states have a ban at conception. So 13 states, the second the sperm meets the egg and baby, and we'll get more into the biology, that's the next segment. But sperm, egg, baby, pop, 13 states ban past that. I probably shouldn't be getting this close. It's probably really loud in your ear. I apologize. And we're going to read those states. Just because, in the AI one, I was holding people accountable. This one, we're just naming names. Idaho, North Dakota, South Dakota, Oklahoma, Texas, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, West Virginia, and Alabama all have conception bans. If you're looking at the map, that's a lot of the South. But also some random states out west. Nothing really up north. I guess that little cunt's up north, but that's the last. Anyways, 9 states have no restrictions. Sorry, I was finding my place in my notes. And that's going to be Oregon, Colorado, New Mexico, Minnesota, Michigan, Maryland, New Jersey, Vermont, and Alaska. No restrictions on abortion, meaning you can do an abortion up to the 3rd trimester. I don't know how I feel about that. I'm just saying legally that's how it's structured, not that anybody's doing it. We'll get there. We're going to look into that. We are going to look into that. Okay, and then other types of laws. There's post-fertilization, which means after sperm meets egg. Okay, so conception's like the act, the sperm meeting the egg. Fertilization occurs around implantation. It all happens very tight together, but there's a distinction. And I'm pretty sure, sorry, I'm not. Yeah, fertilization, none of them are trigger they have weeks after fertilization. So it's blank weeks after fertilization. That's what I wanted to double check. And then last menstrual period, this threw me for a loop. I was like, what does the period of the mother have to do with an abortion? And then my male brain caught up to my smart brain that knows basic biology and spent 2 years in a class of a ton of girls and who grew up with a sister and who's actually, heard this how many times? The doy of it all hit me, but I was like, what? I was confused for a second. I'm not going to lie to you. But then the doy of it all hit me. You don't have your period when pregnant. I don't know why that slipped my mind and left me so confused. I think it just was menstrual period, I don't know. Because I was thinking menstrual period, not menstrual cycle. It just was weird. Since their last menstrual cycle, meaning the last time they had their period, meaning that was the last time that they were confirmably check, you're most certainly not pregnant. Because that's the teller. You get your period, thank God I'm not pregnant. So yeah, and again, these are weeks. And then fetal viability, that means baby can live outside mother's womb. And yeah, that's going to be California, Maine, York, a bunch of different states, generally blue states, have this law up until, basically. So yeah. All right, and then 19 states, restrictions became enforceable with the overturn of Roe. So these were called trigger laws. Essentially, Roe v. Wade got overturned, and they instantly became enforceable. And And then there were 12 states where abortion explicitly remained legal. California, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Nevada, New York, Rhode Island, Washington. They just remained legal. And then 4 states and DC legalized abortion without restrictions on timing. So Colorado, New Jersey, Vermont, and Oregon. And then nationwide, so I got all this information from Ballotpedia, which studies the ballots of different states and different municipalities. There we go. That's not how you pronounce that. I don't know why I said there you go. As if I ate that up. I can't speak. Anyways, towns, counties, small level stuff, state level elections, these sorts of things. And national level elections. But basically, if it's on a ballot, it ends up in their statistical data. And so they also study support for ballot options and stuff. Ballotpedia, great resource if you're doing studies on this sort of stuff. At least in my opinion, which is not humble in this area, because I actually like this website. I'm on it all the time for these sorts of videos. Basically, according to them, nationwide support for state abortion laws actually favors pro-life laws, which is interesting. So yeah, that's where abortion stands in the United States at a state-by-state basis. I know some of y'all might have feelings about it. I know some people might not like how it stands right now. I can't control that. I'm not a wizard, and we're not talking about that. We're talking about whether or not what my opinion is on that, and you're going through me with the process of researching it. So, yeah. And why did I include that? Because I want to look at the legal side of all this and think about this from a legal angle. Meaning, we're going to talk about the next thing. U.S. Code 1841, and this is 18 U.S. Code 1841, by the way, because I've learned things about the U.S. Code system. And basically, this is the code pertaining to the protection of unborn children. I'm going to have the information from that up on the screen, and I'm going to shut up so you can read for a second. Cool. So killing an unborn child who's in utero, meaning in the womb, they're in their mother's womb, there's a baby in the womb, you can't kill that. If you do it unknowingly, it's essentially a manslaughter offense. If you do it knowingly, it's a murder offense. And if you happen to kill the mother in doing this, it doubles. So yeah, there's that. It defines a child in utero as the term unborn child means a child in utero, and the term child in utero or child who is in utero means a member of a species of Homo sapiens, so a human. I don't know why I said that like that. At any stage of development who is carried in the womb. I like that word womb. It's very warm, very homely. I guess it was technically all of ours first home, so. And then it does specify with this U.S. code that it can't be constructed to permit the persecution of abortion, so abortion doesn't count. Okay. Odd. I don't know. There's something about that just is a little interessante, because can't kill a baby. I don't know. I feel like, so this U.S. code basically says that the kid's the fetus is a kid and the kid is alive, and that's all fine and dandy, and that you as a third party can't kill it unless it's an abortion. So is an abortion a separate act, and then what, it's no longer being killed? Because like it's acknowledging that it's being killed. It's stating that it's being killed. I don't know, that's weird. That feels a little inconsistent. Oh, yeah, and I should also say that this applies to the mother and the person with the power of attorney over the mother. And of course the abortionist. I'm including this because it's cited in the previous one. So this is 18 U.S. Code 1365, tampering with consumer products. Also, I did realize that that is going. I'm not stopping this to re-record all this. I'm a half hour into this segment. That thing's not getting stopped. I apologize. I 100% heard it. Like, it cued into my brain that it was running while I was doing this, and we were already 30-some minutes in. I do apologize. That is on me. Whoever with reckless disregard for the risk of another person will be placed in danger of death or bodily injury under circumstances manifesting extreme indifference to such risk tampers with consumer product that affects interstate or foreign commerce or the labeling of or container for any such product or attempts to do so shall, and the rest of the code is just more versions of this, and the shall means penalties. Basically, this is cited in the previous code to say that misconduct, negligence that results in the death of a fetus in utero can also be charged. Just saying. So we are going to cover the U.S. codes for murder, manslaughter, and then the attempt of these two things and what the difference is real quick, just so, because it's referenced, and also because that's an argument that's made that abortion's murder. So, what is murder, according to the U.S. codes? 18 U.S. Code 1111, that's 4 ones, I don't know how many I said. Murder. Murder is the unlawful killing of a human being with malice aforethought. Murder is the unlawful killing of a human being with malice aforethought. Every murder perpetrated by poison, lying in wait, or any kind of willful, deliberate, malicious, or premeditated killing, or committed in the perpetration of or attempt to perpetrate any arson, escape, murder, kidnapping, treason, espionage, sabotage, aggravated sexual abuse, or sexual abuse, child abuse, burglary, robbery, or permitted as part of a pattern of practices of assault, torture against a child or children. It just keeps going against different ways people can get murdered, or different scenarios in which people are murdered. And the reason it keeps going about these is because they're all first degree. Because there is malice aforethought, otherwise known as it being deliberate and pre-planned, premeditated. That is the standard for first degree murder. And the other murder is second degree, and then there's manslaughter, which can be referred to as third degree, if I remember correctly. And we'll get into that in just one second. But essentially, if you kill a human, a Homo sapien, intentionally with malice and forethought, that is first degree murder. Cool. I don't know, like, and it's considered that in the up above, so that's what that is. Manslaughter is the unlawful killing of human beings without malice. It is of two kinds: voluntary upon a sudden quarrel or heat of passion, involuntary in the commission of an unlawful act not amounting to a felony, or in the commission of an unlawful manner or without due caution, and circumvention of lawful act which might produce death. Basically, ignoring the voluntary upon a sudden quarrel or heat of passion, we're going to ignore that, because that's weird. I kind of feel like that should be first. Involuntary in the, and then continuum, means like you fucked up. Means you did something stupid and somebody died. The other one, and actually I do know what this means, I have actually heard about this. It's called crime of passion, or a heat of the moment sort of killing. It's basically, say you and a good friend are in each other's face just screaming at each other. You're just reaming each other, and he says something fucked up, and you say something fucked up, and he triples down, and you quadruple down, and y'all just keep doubling down. And then one of you swings and happens to catch the other one just like right on the temple. Drops dead. Or no, picks up a knife. So you can go there. Just heat of moment, just no thought, just grab, seeing red. That's what that's talking about. I've never been a fan of the fact that that's considered manslaughter, because it's a loss of control, and I don't excuse that personally, but the law does to a certain degree. And then 1113, that's supposed to be 3 1s and a 3. Attempt to commit murder or manslaughter. Yeah, I'm not reading this to you. Basically, if you try to do it and you fail to do it, you can still be charged with doing it. And so this is talking about with that. Now, like all things and all issues, nothing can happen without the president and politicians, I should say. We're not going to say the president. Politicians getting involved. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I do think this is a good thing. I just think it's funny that it happened. Bush signs the Unborn Victims Act in 2024. Or not 2020, 2004. Lord have mercy. That's not even dyslexia. That's just schizophrenia. Seeing twos where they ain't actually there. Essentially, under federal law, any person who causes death or injury to a child in the womb shall be charged with a separate offense in addition to any charge relating to the mother. I mentioned this earlier, but basically, you kill the kid and you kill the mom. You get charged with murder twice. But when it's abortion, it's okay. I'm still I'm wondering what the distinction is there. Maybe there's like a biological thing. I don't know. I don't know what the distinction is. It really sounds like the level of want for the fetus. That stuff. And then Republican George Bush on the passing of the Unborn Victim Act. So the quote that you see, this is him talking about that. That's what that means. And by that I mean that's what that note I wrote for me to say to you means. Unborn Victims Act of 2004. This is the actual bill. The original 2024 Act had provisions for... The original 2004 Act had provisions for abortion. Again, I'm not quite seeing the legal logic in what the difference is, but I guess there is a difference because it's the mother's choice and it's her kid. I guess. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that one. Sorry. So there are state homicide laws that also independently address this. I'm a spaz ass today, apparently. Ignore me. Don't ignore me. Ignore when I'm spazzing out, apparently. State homicide laws that recognize unborn victims. Within varying terms, 38 states recognize the killing of an unborn child as murder at the state level. Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Florida, Georgia, Idaho, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, California, Montana, Rhode Island, Kentucky, Louisiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri, Nebraska, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Maryland, Nevada, Washington, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Virginia, West Virginia, Wisconsin, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts. Massachusetts. You know that's train, Massachusetts. Okay. All of these states hold it illegal via state law to kill an unborn child. It's 38 states. I also want to talk about the implications of using, because we all know birth defects are a thing and that you can use drugs and cause those inadvertently, but still, in your child. So I do want to talk about the role that legally that plays in a mother's life. Depending on your state and jurisdiction, a mother is, so depending on the state and the jurisdiction that a mother's in, she can be held criminally liable for consuming substances that can harm a fetus in utero. And this is within varying scopes, obviously, because it depends on your jurisdiction, and each one's different. But yeah, you can be held liable if you consume things that could harm your fetus as a mother. So that throws, and these are state laws, that throws, though, my mind into question the legitimacy of it's her choice. I'm not... Because only in abortion is it her choice. Literally everything else, she's not given a choice. So I don't I also find it interesting that her power of attorney can make that choice for her. According to the way the laws are written, her power of attorney can make that choice. That power of attorney could be a man. I find that interesting. I also want to talk about one other thing, I guess, trigger warning, because this is actually a topic that I have a lot of compassion for. I'm going to talk about miscarriages, and I know for some people that can be a really difficult topic, so if you don't want to hear about miscarriages, and I'll let y'all know, because it's going to come up a few more times, I'll let you know beforehand, but I'm about to talk about those. So, miscarriage certificate or non-viable pregnancy certification. Some states provide miscarriages or non-viable certificates for instances of miscarriages, and they vary from each state that provides them. I would say, please note, not all miscarriages qualify for this. It's after 16 weeks that they must be officially registered. And it was hard to tell if this is a federal law or a dependent state law, if I'm being fully honest. And I think, I could be wrong, because it was very hard to tell if the difference. I think we're talking federal here. But if it's a miscarriage after 16 weeks, it has to be registered. And the law requires patients to register stillbirths as well. Again, I think federally. Nevertheless, the process is different, and it's necessary to apply for both birth and death certificates for a stillbirth, which is very grotesque. However, a miscarriage certificate just basically says that your pregnancy did not make it to full term. So, what we have on the law so far is that it's unconstitutional for there to be a constitutional provision supporting abortion, at least using the 14th Amendment, that it is illegal to harm a child in utero, and counts as a separate offense if you also harm the mother who, the child is in the womb of. That murder is the voluntary killing, first degree murder is the voluntary killing premeditatedly of another human being, and second degree isn't. And that manslaughter is heat of the moment, crime of passions, as well as involuntary fuck-ups that result in people dying. That it's illegal to use drugs while pregnant. That 38 states protect unborn children from murder, basically, because the Unborn Child Protection Act. So if you kill an unborn child, 38 states have provisions, but there's also federal provisions. It's illegal for a mother to use drugs while pregnant in multiple states. Multiple states require a miscarriage certificate or non-viable fetus certificate, and it's potential that after a certain point it is federal law, and that it is law that if you have a stillbirth, you have to give a birth and death certificate. That's what we have so far. And that the only real loophole to all this appears to be abortion. So legally, I'm kind of questioning it, I'm not going to lie. I don't see the legitimacy legally. However, let's talk about one part of the law that might shine a little bit of light on this, and then we'll wrap up this segment with my thoughts on the legal standing of abortion. So, end-of-life decision for unborn and newborn infants. A parent, mother, or father with a power of attorney may choose to save the child or the mother in the event of a dystocia. It is claimed that this does not happen. I'll tell y'all. I'm living proof that it does. It happens. Things go wrong. Sometimes we die coming out while our mothers are also dying, and hard choices are potential to be made, and that question is asked. Medical professionals are required to attempt to save both the mother and the child. However, sometimes a choice has to be made. And so in that, the mother and the father, or whoever has power of attorney, so father with power of attorney over the mother, may choose to make that choice. So in a dissociative episode, a father can pick mother or child if the mother can't, or the mother can beforehand. Like I said, it's claimed this doesn't happen, but it does. What is interesting is that these laws only apply to birth. Dystocia is a difficult birth, by the way, so these laws only apply to that event during birth, not just birth in general. And it is referred to as an end-of-life making decision. So I don't know if the claim can be made that that gives power of attorney, or that these allow power of attorney for the mother and father over the fetus prior to that moment. I think my final take on the legal standing is that unless there can be a proven biological stand, I'm not sure that legally there's a full foot to stand on. There might be a biological separation that is potential, but then why have all these laws? I don't know. It feels a little skewed and a little inconsistent. So that's where my stance stands now, and that is particularly illegal, and I'm not going to really ever talk about. I'm not really going to take a moral. I might take a slight moral stance, but I don't know. I'm not quite sure how I'm feeling about the whole concept now. But legally, it's a little weird. That's a little odd, with all due respect. But there is a level of inconsistency in the legal landscape of laws surrounding unborn and to-be-born children, and this. All right, loves. I will see y'all in the next part. Next up, we're going to be covering biology, and then after that, we only have three more sections, maybe. I don't know. 2 or 3 more sections after that before we're done. Hopefully, this whole thing is not 4 hours long, but we will see when we get there. Anything else for you guys? No, but thank you all, and please go check out the previous section. And if you want to see more of me, I'm way more active on the other social medias. And if you want to see the notes and how I, keep all my sources together and do all that, that is all up on Patreon. I will say my Patreon is always free, unless I'm releasing something. No, there's nothing I don't want to say that, because I might have a project or something that I do put up there at some point. But I am going to say that for now, and if it's ever notes and stuff, it will definitely be free. But yeah. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you all for watching. If you did, yeah, and come check this out. Or if you were catching this clip randomly, or not so randomly, and you came looking for it, and you want to wait to see the whole thing released, you're more than welcome to do that. I will see you guys later, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, loves. Peace out.